I want to talk about one of my favorite storylines of Daenerys particularly, but also one of my favorite storylines in all of A Song of Ice and Fire, and it's one that I don't think is discussed nearly enough, and it is Dany's storyline with the Dothraki. It would be very easy to write off Daenerys coming into the Dothraki, or rather being sold into the Dothraki, as happenstance. But I would argue that it was fated, that it was something that was always going to happen. Whether Viserys did what he did or not, something would have led Daenerys to her people, the Dothraki. And much like Daenerys has been prophesized and fated to be Azor Ahai, she is also prophesized and fated to be the Stallion who mounts the world. And her being the fulfillment of these two prophecies is also not coincidental. These two prophecies are connected. We are told in A World of Ice and Fire that after the Age of Darkness, what was left of humanity broke off into tribes, and that these tribes were a bit distrusting of each other because of what they had just experienced through the Age of Darkness. So what's left of humanity branches off and becomes ultimately different cultures. I believe that one of these tribes, with the knowledge of Azor Ahai, Nissa Nissa, Forging of Lightbringer, which I believe is the blood bonding of a dragon, took that knowledge and built what would become the Empire of Valyria. Similarly, I believe that another one of these tribes became nomadic. Probably multiple of these tribes became nomadic, which ultimately became what we know as the Dothraki. Meaning that the Dothraki and the Valyrians both have lineage tracing back to the Great Empire of the Dawn, who Dany also has lineage to, which is shown in her dragon dreams in A Game of Thrones. So ultimately, Dany fulfilling these two prophecies, Dany being Valyrian and then coming into the Dothraki as a leader, is the uniting of two separated tribes of the Great Empire of the Dawn. So one of the primary reasons why I believe the Dothraki have origins in the Great Empire of the Dawn is their belief in the Nightlands, and that when you die, you essentially ascend to the heavens on your mount. And we're told in World of Ice and Fire that the God King on Earth, the original ruler of the Great Empire of the Dawn, when he died, he ascends to the heavens. So this is ultimately like the same religious belief. I also find it really telling that the Dothraki have this reverence for horses as mounts, which looks a lot like the relationship that the Valyrians had with dragons as their mounts. So I think the Stallion who mounts the world and the Azor Ahai Reborn prophecy they both originated as a single prophecy in the Great Empire of the Dawn, but then when these tribes were broken up, they were told through different cultural lenses to make sense within that culture, and that is why we ended up with two different versions of ultimately the same prophecy referring to the same young girl. Now, Dany being the Stallion who mounts the world is my favorite of the prophecies that she fulfills, because of the dramatic irony that George used in order to convey this prophecy to us. So we're told this prophecy by a Dosh Khaleen of Vaes Dothrak, and it is told as if it is about Rhaego. So everyone in the story, including Dany, including Drogo, including the Dothraki, believe that this prophecy is referring to Daenerys' son. But for us, the reader, as the story unfolds and we are given more information, more context, we come to understand that it is Daenerys who is the Stallion who mounts the world, who is being positioned to become the Khal of Khals. And the way that it was all right in front of our face in the prophecy, the way the prophecy is worded. So the Stallion who mounts the world is going to be the Khal of Khals, who will unite all of the Dothraki into a single Khalasar, and that Khalasar will ride to the ends of the earth, and the entire world will be the Stallion's herd. Now, being a shepherd of a large herd is an awful lot like being a mother, isn't it? And isn't shepherding disadvantaged people what we have seen Dany desperately trying to do throughout the entire series? So when we look at the language of the actual prophecy, we get swift as the wind he rides. And I love this because it ties back to one of my favorite Dany scenes, which is when Khal Drogo gives her her silver, and she shows off for a little bit. And when she gets off, she says, "Tell the Khal he has given me the wind." She's riding the wind. Swift as the wind, she rides. The prophecy says, "Fierce as a storm, this prince shall be. Daenerys Stormborn, the princess." It talks about hearing the bells in the Khal's hair, which Dany has adopted. And then, of course, in House of the Undying, Dany gets the prophecy of 3 mounts she will ride. That language is intentional. She's riding mounts, 3 of them, one of them for love, as the Stallion who mounts the world. Because she's mounting the world out of love, which is a subversion of what the Dothraki are expecting from the Khal of Khals. They're expecting the Khal of Khals to be a conqueror, right? But Dany is subverting that as a liberator. And I think that this subversion of really toxic aspects of the Dothraki culture is something that we will see come full circle repeatedly in the story to come. We see Dany become the Call of Calls in the show. It's when she returns to Vaes Dothrak and she kills all the Calls, right? That is going to happen in the book. That's what she's being positioned to do at the end of Dance, but it's going to look incredibly fucking different. First of all, Drogon has not abandoned her, right? Also, this idea that she will be taken captive and forced to return, that's a fucking myth. Book Dany is thinking, to go forward, I must go back. She has to go back to Vaes Dothrak, liberate the Dosh Khaleen, claim her place as the stallion who mounts the world before she can move on. So the first big difference is baby's going intentionally. Second big difference is she's going with Drogon. There are several things that Dany is being foreshadowed to do in Vaes Dothrak when she returns with Drogon. The first is she's going to continue her liberation arc by liberating the Dosh Khaleen, the crones of Vaes Dothrak. And this is foreshadowed in a Game of Thrones when she originally goes to Vaes Dothrak and is looking around like, this is my fate. This is what is being forced upon these women. And she hates it. That is George letting us know she gonna deal with it. She is going to bring fire and fucking blood to the Khals responsible for the unaliving and SA of her handmaiden Yoria. Because in the show, she gives that speech that says, those who'd harm you will die screaming, like it's some generic threat because she's so dangerous and unhinged. But in the book, it is under the context of those two specific men who very much fucking deserve to die screaming. Then once she has done that in some huge power display with Drogon, her and Drogon are going to ascend the Mother of Mountains, where she will claim her place as the stallion who mounts the world. Literally claiming her place in front of the womb of the world. This is also foreshadowed in A Game of Thrones when we learn that only men are allowed to ascend the Mother of Mountains, which is so ironic. It's the fucking Mother of Mountains, but only men can go on it. So Dany has to stay behind. George is telling us she gonna do something about that. And I think it'll look a little bit like the scene we get in the show where she is with the Dothraki and Dario, and she like goes off for a second, comes back with Drogon and names them all her blood riders. It's going to look a little similar to that, but it's going to happen here. So we have even more shit coming full circle with Dany's return to Vaes Dothrak. And I think in the end, we will see this full circle one more time. Everyone and their mother knows that I very much believe that Viserion is Dany's legacy, that Viserion is a laying dragon, a she-dragon, however you want to conceptualize that, and that in the end, Viserion will be the sole survivor. I do not think that it makes sense for Viserion to return to Old Valyria. She's never been to Old Valyria. And we know that Valyria is not necessarily a safe place. Look at what happened to Balerion the Black Dread. Viserion's a fraction of that size. I don't think we should be hoping for her to go to Old Valyria. But I can see her settling where she was born, which is in the Dothraki Sea. I can see her specifically returning to the Mother of Mountains, to nest. Another poetic subversion of men only being allowed on the Mother of Mountains, and the Mother of Mountains becoming the nesting place for the new Mother of Dragons. I absolutely believe that by the end of the story, Dany will be deified among the Dothraki, and that a lot of their culture is going to be reoriented around her as their primary goddess figure. Which means that Viserion and whatever dragon babies she has are going to be like fucking religious deities, essentially, to the Dothraki. And what I love the most about this idea is that it reorients the cornerstone of their culture, right? So traditionally they have been pillagers and essayers and slavers, right? Conquering the lamb men. And that will be reoriented, and that warrior status of their society will then be used to become shepherds and protectors of Daenerys and her legacy. And I can just hear Dany saying, if I cannot make my people good, at least I could make them less bad. This gives them a purpose beyond, just fucking up other people. But they can still fuck up people if they come looking for trouble trying to mess with these dragons. Because I am also personally really attached to the idea of the dragons being assigned blood riders as protectors. And because the Dothraki are so superstitious in their religious practices and beliefs, I think that because of the religious status of the dragons, we don't have to worry too much about the Dothraki trying to claim a dragon. I'm running out of time, but I think I said everything I want to say. This is one of my absolute favorite topics, Dany and the Dothraki, so there may be more to come on this.